Yeah, it's well, probably time to get going. So just a few things. Firstly, welcome everybody. It's great to have so many people on a Thursday night for one of these talks. As previously, we're raising money for a charity each time, and in the chat window I've pasted Nicola's chosen charity. I think she'll probably mention that in her talk as well. It is being recorded, so if you want to share this with anybody afterwards and share the charity link, it will all go up on the talks page. So previous talks are up there with previous charity links. And we've still got 3 more speakers after tonight still to go. So running from now right through till mid-April, I think is the last, which are all going to be great. Jeff Roberts, who spoke last time, is suggesting that if anybody wants to stay on at the end for a chat, do stay on. I think probably hand over control to Jeff at the end of this talk. I've got to go, and I think Sean has to go as well. But we'll leave whoever wants to stay on for that. So just want to say a very, very big thank you to Nicola Duncan, who's our speaker this evening. Absolute pleasure to have Nicola here. I think what she's done is amazing, and is great to hear stories like this from people in Carnethy and doing amazing stuff, and in lockdown as well. So Nicola, thank you. I'll hand over to you.
Thanks very much, Ollie and Sean, for helping to organise this. And I'll warn you all, this isn't going to be nearly as exciting or as riveting as some of the other talks we've had. So, but I'll try and keep it interesting. Just to give a little bit of background on the challenge I did in September last year, and the preparation, and the things I found that went well, and the things that didn't go so well, and what I learned from it, and just how it all went. Basically, I had a huge amount of support from Carnethy members, both in my preparation and on the day, and with sponsorship. I think I mentioned, our president sponsored me 3 times for it. So it was, you know, Carnethy definitely had a big input into the event, which is very much appreciated by both Kat and I. So thanks very much. It's going to be quite informal, and if anybody does want to ask any questions, we'll have like a Q&A at the end where people can unmute themselves. But if you want to ask anything throughout, you could just put in a question in the chat and I can see it and hopefully answer it. So don't be shy about asking questions, so I don't just ramble on for ages and ages. So I've got a few slides with lots of pictures that lots of Carnethy people are in, but I'll just start off right from the start really, which is what I'm going to go through. So why the coastal path, and why did I choose that, and a little bit about the preparation, both in terms of the training I did for the challenge, but also the preparation I did for the day itself, and just to make sure that everything went okay. There's a lot more logistics required than you might think for such an event on your own. And then I'll talk about the day itself, although it started at 11 o'clock on the Friday, so it was nearly into 2 days. And then I'll talk a little bit about my recovery afterwards, and the things I learned, and what went well, what didn't go so well, and things I would do differently. And then, as I mentioned, we'll have some questions and answers. So hopefully you can all hear me, and if I start talking too quickly, because I do that a lot, just put in the chat, slow down, and I'll try and slow down a bit. Okay, so why the coastal path? So a lot of you know my really good friend Kat, who also owns my dog Turbo's brother Boost, as you can see in the picture there. She had a horrible accident in July 2019. She came off her mountain bike in Mortseen in a horrible accident, which meant that she is now paralysed from the waist down and confined to a wheelchair. Kat was a Carnethy member and still is, really. I suppose once you're a Carnethy member, you always are. So it was quite a life-changing accident for her. Before that, she worked as a trauma nurse, loved her job, was an absolutely fantastic person, still is. And she was always up for everything, you know, mountain climbing, running, mountain biking, wherever there was something that had a challenge and was fun, Kat was there. So it was a huge change into her life. You know, she can't do her normal job. She can't get out, and she couldn't get out into the hills and do all the things that she used to. And one of the things she said she missed the most was actually being able to go out on adventures with her friends for the day into the hills. She's from the Borders, and that's the thing that she found the hardest about the accident, that she couldn't get involved with her friends and to do these things. Wheelchairs, unfortunately, these days don't really go on much further than cycle paths. So we did a bit of research and we found this amazing bike, which is developed in Canada by somebody in a similar situation to Kat. It's called a Bowhead. And essentially it is like the prima donna of all mountain bikes for people who are in wheelchairs. And it goes over everything, absolutely everything. It goes over stuff that you or I would never manage on our feet. It's absolutely unbelievable. And we decided, with all our research, we looked at videos, we got in touch with the person who had developed it, and we just knew it was what she needed, because she had this bike. She could go out with us, we could run, we could be cycling with her, and she could do all the things that she could do just a little bit differently. But obviously these things cost a lot of money, and they're quite specified for the person, so there's a lot of extra cost. So we needed to raise over £15,000 to get it. So I decided, I don't do very much fundraising generally. I run and I do races because I love them. I always sponsor everybody else, but I'm never really very comfortable about asking people for money. But this time around, I was like, this is something I need to do for Kat. I originally had planned to do the Madeira Trail race in April last year, which was 115 kilometers, about 8,500 meters of ascent, which was absolute killer. So that was going to be my big challenge and big fundraiser for Kat. And then, as we all know, COVID hit, everything got cancelled. Madeira got cancelled. Every other race I had in the calendar for the year got cancelled. So all the fundraising that I had initially started for Kat, it came to a standstill. So I wasn't happy about this. I wanted to still fundraise for Kat, but I was aware I needed to do something to get people to sponsor me. So I had to think about what could be a really good challenge that wasn't going to be affected by race cancellations. I needed to create my own challenge. So I had a good think about it, and I thought, what could I do that wasn't too far from me? Restrictions were starting to ease a little bit, which meant that we could go a little bit further. And then I thought of the Fife Coastal Path for quite a few reasons. When Carnethy, as you know, organised by Mike Lynch, does an event every year. So it's like a relay team where the Fife Coastal Path is divided into 6 legs, and it's absolutely amazing, so much fun. I've been involved in it quite a few years, and it's just a brilliant event. It's gotten more and more popular over the years, and it was a shame that I didn't get to go ahead last year with COVID. So I had experience of doing that. I hadn't done all of the legs, but last Christmas, or I keep saying last Christmas, will be the Christmas before this last Christmas, Neil McClure and Alex Coakley, also Carnethy members, and we did a lot of our long runs on the Fife Coastal Path just for a bit of variety. Neil lives in Fife, so he was always our guide, and we had some great days out, just following the path, having a couple of diversions. It was always really good. So I had some really good memories and experiences on the path with them. So I thought, could I do it all in one go? And then I thought, first of all, God, no, that's far too much, because the furthest I'd ran before that was 53 miles of the fling of the West Highland Way. So 117 miles is a huge jump from 53 miles. But then I thought, you know, if it's going to be a challenge, it needs to be a proper challenge. And for Kat, you know, I wanted to do something that people would really recognize as a challenge. I do a lot of ultras. If I just said I was going to do a 50k race, people, you know, mightn't have been that impressed. So I needed to do something that was going to be a proper challenge, and any proper challenge has to have a chance of failure. So once I had said it out loud, then it was just going to happen. And that's how I decided. So then I started thinking about how I would prepare for it. So the first thing you need to do with a challenge like this, where it's not a race, there's not going to be, you know, markers along the way. There's not going to be marshals to make sure you don't go wrong. It's getting familiar with the route. I am notorious for getting lost. I always go the wrong way, sometimes spectacularly. I've been in Chamonix doing the UTMB route 3 hours into my third day, and I ended up back where I started that morning. I still don't know how I managed to do that. I am Rachel Norman and I have had a couple of adventures along the way over the years where we've ended up quite far from where we wanted to, even in just the Pentlands. So I am notorious for making navigational errors, as you might say. And a lot of the time it's just because I'm not concentrating and I'm just getting a bit unfocused, and I just end up going a little bit wrong. So I knew when I was doing this route that it is marked, which is helpful, but a lot of the markers aren't particularly obvious in some places. And it's always the places that you need them to be obvious that they're not. So I needed to go and have recce's. So I had quite a few weekends doing the routes. You know, I did a few weekends where I would get start off in Kirkcaldy and then run to St Andrews and stay overnight, and then I would try and do the rest of the leg the next day. So the restrictions were easing a little bit, so I was able to have an overnight stay. So I had quite a lot of fun. I got lost quite a few times. The last leg I'd never done before, and I ended up on a motorway, and I ended up going 9 miles in the wrong direction on the motorway. So that was quite an interesting diversion, and I just kept thinking, God, this is me near the finishing line and I've managed to go 9 miles the wrong way. This cannot happen on the day. But thankfully Neil McClure came to my rescue, and the next weekend he came with me and we did a recce of the final 17 miles. No bother this time round. We saw where I went wrong. In my defense, there wasn't a proper sign. It was hidden around the corner, so if you didn't go around the corner you didn't see it. But we made our way to the finishing line, and that's when I started to think about, gosh, you know, trying to visualize on the day getting to the finishing line and, you know, feeling as strong as I did that day with Neil. So I was trying to prepare myself mentally. You know, it was going to be really hard. I knew I was going to have tough moments, and I needed to think of the finishing line and visualize myself going over it. So that was kind of a big part of the training and the preparation, was just getting familiar with the route. It was quite a fun bit, you know, after being cooped up with very strict lockdowns. It was quite nice to be able to have a little bit of freedom to go in on the trails, and I managed to time all of my recce weekends with great weather. So I'd come back after a weekend all nice and tanned and sunburnt a few times, but it was great. Also, those recce weekends helped me choose my kit and what clothes I would wear. One of the weekends was absolutely boiling. I just was sweating the whole time, and I've never shaped before, but suddenly I did because I was sweating so much. I had, you know, marks on my hips and everything because of my shorts were just rubbing up and down with the sweat. So I had to think about, God, won't be able to deal with this for 117 miles if I'm getting chafing doing 30-mile days. So I ended up wearing a skort, which is you boys mightn't be familiar with, but it's basically shorts with a skirt over it, but the shorts are like cycling shorts, so they're very neat, and they're amazing. So as well as looking nice, which is very important, there's no chafing at all. And I wore one of them on the day of the event and had absolutely no issues. So that it was good that I had those issues on the recce weekends, because I just made sure they didn't happen on the day. As for trainers, I love the Le Sport Helios. They're a good all-rounder, a good hybrid trainer. Parts of the route were on road, but also parts of it were a little bit more technical, particularly near the end when you're going through forests. Quite a big section before St Andrews where there's a lot of technical beaches and rocks, so I knew I would need something with a bit more grip. And those trainers are just so comfortable. I think it says a lot that I wore them for 117 miles and didn't even have a blister. So I got my kit right. I had my pack, made sure that my pack was comfortable, made sure that I carried everything on my recce weekends I would have on the day. I always prefer to have more on me and not be relying on people to bring it for me. So yeah, so all of those things I got to practice on the day, even from making sure my head torch was comfortable, because I would need to use the head torch for quite a long time. So all of these things were all kind of worked out over the recce weekends. And then the next thing then is the nutrition and the hydration. So this has never been an area of my personal strength, which a lot of people will probably acknowledge who've ran with me. I'm not particularly good on long runs of eating and drinking enough, and you can get away with it for certain lengths of distances, and you just make sure you hydrate really well afterwards and you eat well afterwards. But for an event and a run this long, I knew I would have to really eat a lot more than normal, and I had to practice. So I used, a lot of people asked me about what worked for me. I used Morton, which is an energy drink, a little bit like Tailwind. I find it absolutely amazing. It's got the highest concentration of carbohydrates per gram without bothering your stomach. So it was absolutely fantastic, and no issues with my stomach. And I used it on all my recce weekends and on the day, and it was absolutely brilliant. I also use Coke, which I never usually touch, but it's a great caffeine boost when you need it in a long day like that. And I also had Lucozade Sport, just for a bit of variety. First thing I did when I finished the event and I got home was wash my teeth, because I don't usually touch all those sugary drinks. And then in terms of actual food, I would say, I'll go into this in a bit of detail later about what went differently on the day that was kind of out of my control, but I practiced with things like banana bread. It's nice and easy to chew. You can just shove it in and just goes down nicely. Blueberry muffins also worked very well. Again, not much chewing involved, because I'm not particularly good at eating, so anything I could just shove down was very much what I wanted. Ice cream, I find ice cream amazing. Again, it just slides down nicely, plenty of calories and energy in it. It cools you down if you're warm, and it's lovely. It makes you feel, cheers you up a little bit when you need a bit of a cheer up. So I always recommend ice cream. It's a great one, and I always think ultra races should have ice cream, but maybe not in Scotland. Marshmallow sweets, again, easy to shove down. Trying to have them regularly, just they're full of sugar, but they don't irritate your stomach. And then I would also have had Cliff Block sweets with caffeine in them, so they were kind of every so often I would have a few of them just to get a caffeine boost. So I kept it simple. I didn't really experiment with a huge amount of things. I found the things that worked for me, and I kept it nice and simple. And the last thing is a bit about preparing the body and the mind for the event. So obviously I needed to get my body in a position that it was ready to run 117 miles. So over the summer I was running 100 miles a week, just getting myself ready and getting the body prepared. Just, I was tired all the time, but the body, I knew the body was going to be in this place where I could run all day, and I wasn't going to get niggles. Things weren't going to break down because my body was used to it. So I think for any ultra or any race, the body needs to be prepared for it. And that doesn't mean doing anything near the distance that you're going to do prior to it. I mean, even before the fling, which is 53 miles, I didn't get anywhere near 53 miles in training. I think the longest run I would have done would have been 33 miles. And even for I think the longest run I did before the Fife Coastal Path in one go, I think I did 40 miles one weekend on the Saturday over a long time, though I had plenty of stops and stuff. But most of my runs would have been around 26 to 30 miles. But I was doing them, 2 days in a row at the weekends, and basically just getting the body ready for it. Preparing the mind, as I mentioned earlier, kind of visualization, imagining myself finishing and how I would feel, and also remembering why I was doing it, which is very important. I was doing it to fundraise for Kat, so there was never a doubt in my mind that I wouldn't do it. I knew it was going to be hard, but it was accepting that it was going to be hard and there would be down points, but also remembering that whenever you have a bad point, that there's going to be a high point that follows. So I tried to kind of think about these things coming up to it, and I thought about it a lot. I was nervous, I was very anxious, I didn't want to let people down. I wanted to give it my best shot, but ultimately I was heading into the unknown because I had never done anything like this before. So yeah, I remember the week beforehand being excited but also very, very nervous. So the next thing was getting ready for the day and making sure I had everything ready. So the first thing was my nutrition. Had to go and buy all my blueberry muffins, getting on my banana bread from the local bakery, Archipelago, which I can't even pronounce. There's no way I was going to actually try and bake it myself when theirs was so good. Getting on my pack ready, getting all my water bottles ready, with the powder in it, and basically planning what I was going to have every time I stopped. And that comes down to the next point about the support team and the logistics. So because it was such a long distance, I knew I wouldn't be able to carry everything I needed, and particularly for liquids. There are a few shops along the way, but it made much more sense that there would be somebody that would be there at various points, and that they would have replenishments for me. So my other half, he does nothing to do with running unless there's a rugby ball. He doesn't understand why you would run. He doesn't really have any interest in any of my races. He doesn't watch any of them. Yeah, he doesn't have any interest in them, but he really likes Kat. Kat is a good friend of his, and so he said he would rent a car and he would be at the different points along the way. So that was a big plus that he was going to do it. I was very nervous that he would make a mess of it and he wouldn't be in the right places, and that I'd given him detailed instructions, but he didn't really pay that much attention when I was going through all the instructions. He was watching a rugby game and he's like, oh, I'll look at it later. So I was really worried that he was going to give me the wrong thing at the wrong stop. I kept telling him, Dave, it's like a Formula One pit stop. It has to be like really, really quick. You should be ready for me coming. And he's like, yeah, it'll be fine. But yeah, I have to say that was one area I was quite worried about because he hadn't done it before. I knew he wouldn't really enjoy it. And I knew I needed him. So I was quite nervous about that. But I had to kind of put it towards the back of my mind. So I had decided that because I was going to start at 11 p.m. on the Friday night, there's a few reasons for that. I was working all day Friday, and I thought it would be better to do most of the darkness bit while I was fresh. So if I started at 11 p.m, it would be in the pitch black, but then it would get bright at around 6 or so in the morning, and then I would have all the day in the dark, in the bright, and hopefully not too much at the other end in the darkness when I was tired. So that was the main logic behind starting at 11 p.m. rather than starting the next morning. Also with the tides, the way I did that, just by chance, it worked out well, and the few sections where tides could have been an issue actually weren't. So there was a few reasons for that. So the next thing I decided to do, having watched lots of FKT videos over the summer, and people had support runners, so I was like, well, it might make it more fun if I had a few people running with me just to keep me happy and keep me distracted. And once I mentioned that to a few people, everybody was really, really keen. So the next thing I knew, I had support runners for the entire thing. So literally from the start right until the finish, I had people running with me, which was absolutely phenomenal. So it was great. I was quite looking forward to it. It was going to be a great day out. And also that meant that could help with some of my nutrition things. I had decided that whatever hope I had of Dave doing a good job, if he had to start at 11 p.m. and go through the night, he just would have been a disaster during the day. So I was like, all right, I don't need to get Dave involved until like the next morning. So at least then he'll have had a good night's sleep and he should be fresh. So that was quite key for me. And then what I did for all of my support runners in the first kind of 7 or 8 hours, I asked them if they could bring me 2 bottles of Lucozade Sport. So I had enough with me to keep me going for a few hours, and then they would just bring me more Lucozade Sport. So that actually worked really well, because I had enough food with me. It was just the liquid that I needed until my Formula One pit stop number 1 came about. So yeah, so it was all coming together, and everybody was so excited. We set up a WhatsApp chat, and everybody was, you know, getting really excited for it. So it was, yeah, I was really looking forward to it. And then I had my kit ready. I had practiced on what I was going to wear. I got some arm sleeves the week before because I knew I might be a bit cold, and I got these multicolored rainbow ones. So I was going to look good too. My sunglasses matched my t-shirt and my skirt. Yeah, it was all coming together. So yeah, then the day itself. So the picture on the left is me in my kitchen just before I got ready to go. So you can see I've got my arm sleeves on there, pack already. My friend Michael ran the first section with me. So he picked me up and we drove to Dunfermline, where his girlfriend drove us to the start. And it was, yeah, it was quite surreal, just the two of us getting ready to go. And we had a lovely leg actually. He ran with me until Queensferry, and it was a lovely, beautiful night. It was so still, the moonlight, but you could see the bridge coming. It was just fantastic, and it was nice to catch up with Michael. I hadn't seen him, hadn't had a good chat with him in ages. So yeah, it was just quite nice, and I was quite fresh, just taking it quite easy. The only down bit, and I won't go into an elaborate detail here, is that I'd had a bit of an upset stomach all week. So I'd had to stop 3 times in the first 45 minutes, which has never happened to me ever in a race, ever. And then suddenly in the biggest event of my life, it happened to me 3 times in the first 45 minutes. So that kind of jarred me a bit. And I was like, God, I'm going to run out of energy. I'm probably a bit dehydrated. It also meant that some of the stuff I'd packed, I didn't really want to eat. I had briefly thought I would try pita bread with almond butter. I hadn't practiced with it, but somebody said it would be a good thing to have, but I couldn't even look at that. So yeah, but I just decided, right, well, to see how I go, I'm going to have a bit more liquid, and try not to get anxious about it. And thankfully my stomach settled after that, so I didn't have any more issues for the rest of the run, but it wasn't a great start. On the picture on the right, my 2 Carnethy support crew, Nikki Friedman and Kathy Henley, were absolutely fantastic on the day. They came along to loads of different places. They always had a smile. They had their dogs. It was absolutely brilliant to see Penny and Heidi the dogs. They had whatever I asked them at different points, they brought it. And they basically cheered me up every time because they were having a really good day. They were really enjoying it. So that was great. And they also made Dave's life a little bit easier because he helped with logistics in terms of my support runners. He brought them back to their cars, but it meant that he didn't have to rush to get to the next place if Kathy and Nikki could be there. So that made a big difference on the day. And that wasn't something we thought about until the day, and when he realized they were going to be there. But he said it just made him a little bit more relaxed, that he didn't have to rush as much to get around. So there we go. So the next picture is Peter McDonald, another Carnethy runner, who we had decided in advance we would coordinate her outfits. So we look a bit like minions on the picture on the left. So yeah, that was great fun. We got a lot of funny looks matching perfectly. And he picked me, that would have been further on, that would have been at Annesruther when he picked me up. At that stage, I'd already ran with my friend Warren, who had been fantastic. Hadn't seen Warren properly in ages, and he ran with me from like 2 a.m. because he's got 2 little girls. So the 2 a.m. slot actually suited him really well while his kids were sleeping. So that was really nice. And he's really into his wildlife and nature. And we saw a tawny owl, which he got so excited about that I had to get excited about as well. So that was really good fun. And with a friend of mine, Elliot, he came out to guide us around a diversion near Aberlady. Not Aberlady. Gosh, it's gone in my head. Anyway, so we saw this random man with a head torch on at 3 in the morning, and we're like, oh God, who's that? And then he was there. He was just to guide us around the diversion where there had been one of the bridges had fallen down. So that was so nice of him, and he'd even brought some snacks and some treats, and just as well he was there, because Warren's sense of direction is even worse than mine, so we definitely wouldn't have figured out the diversion at all. So that was definitely a good thing. And then so at he ran with me as far as Burnt Island, and then this is where I had a tracker so everybody could see where I was going. So I'd given time estimates, but obviously they ended up being not particularly accurate because I slowed down a lot more than I thought I would. But Mike Lynch and Ross Beveridge are meant to meet me at Burnt Island, but anyway, the tracker went a bit funny and they didn't get me. So I was like, oh no, I'm gonna have to run all the way to Leven all by myself. But Ross drove his car and he went as far as the next train stop, which is, it's where the Black Rock 5 race is. Gone out of my head. And he caught up with me, so I only had to do 5k by myself, so that was really good. When Ross came along, and yeah, it was great. And we got the sunrise, which was just beautiful. So it was absolutely stunning to see the sunrise, and I was happy to get rid of my head torch at that stage as well, because I'd had it on for so long. And Ross and I had great chats. We figured out that he probably served me a Bellini or 5 a long time ago, back in the days when I used to go to bars like Tiger Lily, and he was serving there. So it was quite interesting, actually. And Ross has done a huge amount of ultras, 100-mile races and everything. And he had a lot of really good tips. And when I was getting tired, he said all the right things. So he was brilliant. And he went as far as Leven a bit further. And we met my friend Alan there, and Alan was great crack. He was so hyper, he was jumping up and down when he saw me coming. He was just so excited. I was like, wow. And he had Lucasade Sport, and he was just wanted to look after me for the few hours he ran with me, and it was really good to catch up with him too, and he had me laughing the whole way. And then we got as far as Annesrother. My minion was waiting for me, Peter, and Peter just made me laugh for the whole thing. I was struggling a little bit at this stage. I was starting to get a bit tired. Just generally, I think at that stage I'd ran further than I'd ever ran before. So I was just generally feeling a bit tired, and it was a gorgeous day, and the terrain got a bit tough around St Andrews. It was quite slow going over the beaches, a lot of boulders and rocks, which is hard when you've got tired legs. But Peter was super. He just said all the right things, and he put seaweed on his head to make me laugh. And I remember at one point saying to him, "This is really, really hard, Peter, but I'm actually having a good time." And it just, we're like, well, this is what the day's about, is having a good time. So that was, definitely a highlight. And he definitely got me through a tough batch, because I was definitely starting to feel a bit tired, and I had loads left to do. So he was just, I couldn't have done it without him. He was just brilliant. And he messaged Dave as well, just to say get some ice cream for Nicola to have at the next stop, because she's struggling to eat her other stuff. So when I got to St Andrews, I had the best surprise ever. Was Kat was waiting for me. So she said she was going to try and be at a point to support me, but I knew it was quite a big deal for her to come and meet me. It's a lot more logistics involved when you're in a wheelchair to get to places. So I told her, don't worry, it'd be great to see you, but if you don't manage it. And she said afterwards that there was never any way she wasn't going to be there. And it was just fantastic. I think I'll get the picture of Kat. There we go. If you can see it on the right hand side there, it's when we got into St Andrews, and I saw Kat, and it was the best part of the entire day. It just lifted me so much. We were all crying. It was just so emotional. And then they all fed me ice cream. It was great. I didn't really want to go on after that. I was having such a nice time. But alas, I had to go on. So the picture on the left is Alan running with me just along the beach. That would have been probably just before Ely. So beautiful, absolutely stunning. Really enjoyed that section. So I'll go back a little bit here. So anyway, so after St Andrews, I had my girly crew. So I'd only really had boys until that point. And then Corey was waiting for me at St Andrews, where Kat was. So after we said goodbye to Kat, and he was just very emotional, then Corey had a lip balm for me, which is just what I needed, because my lips were actually getting a bit chapped. And then we met Kay and Julie, and it was just so nice to have a bit of girly chat. Corey even gave me a massage. It was just wonderful. I did have a bit of a low at this point, shortly after this, I think I got to about, maybe it would have been about 88 miles at that stage, and I knew I still had loads left, and I was starting to feel really tired, like really, really tired, and was kind of starting to do a bit more walking as well as running. But I was trying to keep positive. It was really warm at this stage, and the girls were in great form. They were just really happy to be there, but I was definitely starting to feel it. And I remember thinking, I actually wish I had just stopped in St Andrews and gone home with Kat. But you know, that obviously wasn't an option, and I had done so much at that stage, but I was definitely feeling tired. So luckily I had met a few more people at Luker's. So I had Peter Buchanan and my friend Donnie. So I didn't know my friend Donnie was going to be there. That was a complete surprise. So he had managed it because he had childcare issues and things, but he'd managed to surprise me. Peter Buchanan I knew was going to be there, and I was really pleased about that because Peter is a great guy. He has so much experience with these things, and he'd contacted me from the word go. He really wanted to do a section, and he wanted to do the glory leg. So he wanted to bring me to the finish. And Peter was phenomenal because when I started to walk, he was like, right, Nicola, you've got like 30 miles left. You know, we're not going to walk it in. So he said, you're going to eat something and I'm going to give you some paracetamol. Now, I know you're not supposed to have, you know, drugs and things like that when you're doing long runs. And I've never done it in a race before, but I was quite desperate at this point. So I had some paracetamol and it was amazing. Suddenly, I just felt like great. I could run again. I think nothing was hurting in particular, but I just had a general ache in my whole body. Everything was just tired and aching. But the paracetamol just seemed to take the edge off it, which is what Peter had said it would do. And suddenly I was running again, you know, felt like I was going at a good pace. It was great. We picked up Alex Coakley then at Tentmere Park. He'd gone there for the day with his wife and girls, Effie and Emily. Effie beat me in a race before Alex just left her to go back herself. And he continued on. So at that point, the girls had left. They'd gone back to Edinburgh, and it was Peter, Alex, and Donnie and I. So it was four of us heading on to the next checkpoint, which would have been the last checkpoint at Wormouth Bay. So at that point, I knew I was getting really close to 100 miles, and actually I got to 100 miles just before then, and Donnie was beside me, and we've got a nice picture of that. So that was really cool, actually, just to get to 100 miles. And then we said goodbye to Donnie, and we picked up Neil McClure, who had been with me from the start of the adventure and had been on so many recce's with Alex. So it felt appropriate that he would do the last leg with me. And also I knew he knew that leg because he'd done it with me a few weeks ago. So I knew I was sorted for that leg. So I think I've got, there we go, on the left-hand side there, you can see Peter and Alex and Neil and Donnie just before Donnie left, just getting ready for the last leg. That's some Coke on my lap there. Everybody was trying to get me to eat stuff at that stage, but at that stage, I just wanted to drink stuff rather than eat them, which wasn't ideal, but I did my best. And then the picture on the right is just us heading out just for the last leg. At that stage, I always said if I got to the last section, I knew I would do it. Even if I was tired, I knew the last 16, 17 miles, you know, even if I had to walk it, I would finish it. So I was quite hyper at that stage because I knew I was going to finish it. I was tired, but I felt like I was going to get there. And we had a great time. It was really, really good. I asked Peter for more drugs later on, and he supplied them for me. So yeah, life was good. We did joke that he was my my drug dealer at one point. Alex took the best photo, which I didn't even include today. A great one of the head torches. And we had a lengthy conversation on whether he should get a watermark on it. And Peter told him at one stage that he thought people that did that were kind of idiots, which was quite funny. But yeah, everybody was in good spirits, and it was quite nice having a few people around me, because if I was too tired to talk, it was nice just to hear them chatting together. So I didn't have to contribute too much, but it was just nice hearing all the chat. And Neil was really good. He ran a lot with me, and he wanted to hear about what had happened during the day, and he was just phenomenal. They all were super. Everybody just kept me in good spirits, and yeah, it was great. I think I've missed a few pictures here from this one. Yeah, so that was a picture on the left, which we took because it was shortly after Mark, our president, had a run in with the cows. So we were showing him what you should do if you see a cow. So we got through unscathed. And then the last picture is just as we were starting to need our head torches again. So the last section is quite nice. It goes inland a bit, it goes through farms, so it's quite different than the rest of it. A bit more hilly, but it's a very nice route, and we got head torches on, and yeah, and then it's more pictures here. That was my section with Peter. Peter took great pictures, actually. It was like my own personal photo shoot. But so yeah, and then when I got to the finish, I knew the last section was about 2 miles to get to it. And yeah, it was great. I think I've tried to pick up the speed, and I managed to finish quite strong. And I just couldn't believe I had done it. And all I could think about was Kat, and messaged her, and we called, and yeah, it was good. I felt tired, but apparently I was the most hyper person at the finish, which I was surprised at. But yeah, so yeah, it was good. Then I'll just talk briefly before we have a few questions. Recovery and what I learned. So I suppose the first thing was the nutrition and the hydration. You know, after I had the upset stomach, I kind of learned that I was going to have to rely on liquid calories more than I had planned to. But I just worked out in my head how much more I would need to drink of the energy drinks that I planned. So you need to be adaptive. I think that's one of the things I learned. Having the support runners and a really good team. I mentioned Dave earlier on. He actually on the day was absolutely brilliant. He actually really enjoyed it. He said he really enjoyed bringing people back to their cars after they'd run with me. And he said it was actually just a nice day out. He got some fish and chips, and he said he really enjoyed it. I don't think he was going to be doing it every time I do a race like that, but yeah, it was quite nice, and he did a great job. He didn't mess up at all, even though I thought he would. I think I probably should have given him a bit more credit than I did in advance. He was great, and he was great for bringing everybody back to their cars, which helped a lot with logistics. The mental preparation, I think, you know, doing all the recce runs and visualizing it and being confident in my ability that I could do it, that really helped. And also always remembering why I was doing it. You know, when it did get hard and when I did want to stop, you know, just reminding myself why I was doing it. So that definitely helped. Now, the sleep, that was interesting, and that's part of my recovery. Afterwards, I didn't sleep properly for 2 weeks, which I don't know if anybody else has had that experience. I knew I wouldn't sleep well the night afterwards because I was my legs are always a bit restless when I do a long run, but I thought I would sleep really well the next night, and I just couldn't get my sleeping pattern back for ages, which meant took me a bit longer to recover because I was quite tired. So that's something I think I need to be aware of if I ever try and do something like this again. And then the last point I've just mentioned there was having fun. I had a great day out, and I think trying to remember, even if it's hard, that it's meant to be fun. You know, it shouldn't be torturous. And I remember watching some of the other FKT events and some of the videos, and I just thought, God, I had a lot more fun than they did. So I think, you know, all the pictures, I'm smiling, I had a good time, but it was just, yeah, I had a good day out. But I couldn't have done it without everybody that helped with me. You know, all the people that ran with me, all the people that helped me train, all the people that helped with logistics on the day, all the sponsorship. You know, it's just, yeah, it definitely wasn't a solo effort at all. It was very much a joint effort, and I hope I can take everybody out for dinner. Unfortunately, about a week after the event, the restrictions came back and forth, so I couldn't take everybody out for dinner as I planned, but I haven't forgotten. But yeah, so it was definitely a success, and I enjoyed it. And you know, and the best bit was in the next picture, we got Kat her bike. So you can see on the right hand side, that's Kat Bowhead bike, and it goes in the snow. She wouldn't have been able to go out in the snow otherwise. And that's her dog Boost, who's the brother of my puppy Turbo, as you can see our puppies on the left. So yeah, we got her the bike. So everybody who helped sponsor, and just thank you very much. Just like to take this opportunity to everybody that did sponsor us, and for all the support. Just thank you very much. And any questions?
Nicola, that is fantastic talk. Very, very inspiring. What you did and why you were doing it, and great to get all of your observations. I think that's really helpful for everybody. I think there's lessons in there for all of us on this call. So I guess I'm just going to be greedy and jump in with a couple of questions, and then hopefully we'll get some other questions as well. Has the Fife Coastal Path been run in Awana before?
Yeah. Hold on 1 second. I'll do this.
Yep.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
There was somebody on the street that said it was barking. So path has been done by another Carnethy member, but I think he walked big sections of it. So I did actually manage, I forgot to mention in my talk there, I did actually manage to set the fastest known time for it.
Fantastic.
But it was more a case if I finished it, I was probably going to set the fastest known time. So
Wow,
it's not actually as impressive as it sounds.
No, that's brilliant. And what remind us what your time was for 117 miles?
It was 23 hours and about 15 minutes. I should know the exact time actually. So, but I've forgotten it.
Well, that's fantastic. And I'll just ask one more question before I go on to everybody else. But interesting that you struggled to sleep afterwards. Do you suffer from night sweats when you finish these big runs?
No, not night sweats. Very, very, very restless legs, but not night sweats. But my legs would often be very, very restless. I'm usually cold, but
I think your body's in some type of shock or or breaking down.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, well look, I'll jump in. So if anybody wants to unmute and ask, then by all means. I'll maybe start by just reading the ones in the chat windows. So from Sean.
I missed them, sorry.
No, it's okay. I'll read them out. You mentioned that sleep's needed. Would you sleep during an event like this in the future, or sleep more beforehand, or maybe even change the time that you started?
It's a really good question, and I've thought about that. I had a very stressful week coming up to it. I had a big meeting on the Friday afternoon for work for 3 hours. So that was Friday 3 till 6, which wasn't the ideal way to spend my Friday afternoon, but it was just one of these things, and it's life, you have to work around it. So in an ideal world, I would have been better rested beforehand in terms of sleep. I don't think I would sleep during an event. I think I'm not somebody who can just have a quick few minutes and get going again. I know some people do, but I don't have a huge amount of experience with it. And during the actual event, I didn't feel sleepy at any point. I was actually a little bit disappointed because I didn't have any of those hallucinations that people have said they get. I was quite looking forward to having some hallucinations and seeing what I would see, but I didn't actually feel that sleepy at any point. I felt tired, but I didn't feel particularly sleepy, probably because I had so much caffeine. So I think it was just more the recovery. I think not being able to sleep afterwards just meant it took me a little bit longer to recover because my legs felt fine. I was just quite tired.
Yeah, for some reason.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that's great. So from Mark, superb effort, really well presented. Times ? I think we've probably covered that. Mark, if I've missed anything about your time question, then do let me know. From Keith Burns, very polished, great achievement. From Mary Brown, so glad Kat got her bike. What a lovely photo. Well done, Nicola. You're an amazing friend. I'll skip out some of the. You can catch up on some of the compliments later. From Murdo McEwen in Carnethy, well done, great talk too. Does anyone do the route in the other direction?
No, so I did ask about that, and I haven't heard about it, but I'm sure people do. I think it would be quite fun to do it in the other way around. I think the only thing that's probably a little bit harder to logistics where it finishes is quite in the middle of nowhere. It's not really near any public transport. I know when I did my recce routes, I had to have somebody meet me at the finish to bring me back, where I think it might be a little bit easier to do the start So just from a logistical point of view, if you don't have a car.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, from Sean again, Kat's bike looks amazing. What kind of range does it have? Hours of battery charge?
Yeah, it's battery charged, so she charges it after every time she uses it, and I think it should keep going for like 5 to 6 hours. It can get phenomenal speeds. She can go much faster than I would on a bike. we all struggle to keep up with her when she's on it, if she's able to go fully out. She's actually, I think we're all saying we need to get an electric mountain bike to keep up with her.
It's like an arms race of bicycles.
Yeah, but it's phenomenal. It's just the terrain that it can go over. I've been on walks with her where, you know, there's been over tree trunks and everything, and I'm very gingerly going over them, and she's just flying over them.
Wow.
It's absolutely fantastic piece of machinery. Yeah,
brilliant. I'm very pleased. From Avril, what running pack did you use?
I used Ultimate Direction. I find them really comfortable because they have a female specific version. So I've never had any issues with chafing or bottles bouncing around. They're really comfortable, and you can fit so much in them, and they've got lots of pockets as well, because I like to have things like with easy access. So I find their packs just absolutely brilliant. I've got a few of them.
Brilliant, great. From Joanne, how long did you rest after the run?
A good question. So the next day I was tired, but I wanted to keep moving, so I had some easy walks with the dogs. My friend had minded them for the 2 nights, but she brought them back at around lunchtime, so I had some very slow, easy walks with them. And then on the Monday I did some Pilates and went for a walk. I was back at work, and then Tuesday I think I went to the gym and just kind of sat on the bike, just to kind of ease the legs out. But on the Wednesday I did a run, just a very easy jog with some friends. We went around Arthur's Seat and around town just for about an hour, but very slow and easy. But my legs recovered a lot quicker than I thought they would. I did have an issue with my pelvis a couple of weeks afterwards, which I'm not really sure if it was related to do with the race or if it was related to do with just these things sometimes happen. But I would say for the 2 weeks after the race I didn't have any issues with my legs. I was quite surprised at how quickly they recovered.
Yeah. Wow. Andy Fallis, great achievement, well done. Would you change anything in your nutrition if you were to do something similar?
It's a really good question, because I had thought about that. I think I would practice with a few other things. In my recce weekends, I was initially it was really hot the weekends I did all my long runs, so I didn't really want to eat that much. So it meant that I kind of stuck with ice cream, the banana bread and the blueberry muffins, which probably isn't ideal for things like that. And I think having a savoury option and not just sweet stuff is probably an idea, and partly probably why I didn't sleep very well the night afterwards, because I had so much sugar in my system. But it worked on the day, you know, I got away with it. But I think I probably would try and have more savoury stuff, more savoury options.
Yeah. Just a recollection, sorry, from Peter McDonald, the best photographer in Carnethy, after his Carnethy 5 photos from a year ago in February.
Yeah.
One highlight that stood out for me was the group of people near Kings Barnes village who stopped to ask if Nicola was the running lady.
That's
we stopped and had a chat, and they gave some sponsorship there and then. Then a couple of minutes later, a local girl saying it was amazing to see Nicola, as she'd been following online all day. Really proud of Nicola's achievement. So,
yeah, that was lovely, that group of people we met, and they literally pulled money out of their pockets. That they were hoping they'd meet me to give me money. And I remember thinking at the time, all the COVID restrictions, but there was no way I wasn't going to not accept their money. But it was so funny when you've been so conscious of all of these restrictions for so many months and nobody was using cash. But they were such lovely people, and they were asking about Kat, and it just really touched me. And Peter was with me, and the two of us were just near tears, because it was really lovely.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe just a couple more before we wrap up. So from Claire McDonald, are you keen to run races of that kind of distance in the future?
Yes, I've actually entered the South Downs Way, which is in June this year if it goes ahead, which is a 100-mile race. So I'm only just back running after a couple of months out with injury. I fell at the start of the year and broke some ribs in my back, which put me out a lot longer than I ever thought would happen. So if I get back to that, but I think it did make me realize that I can do it. Obviously it'd be a different experience in a racing environment, but my legs were able for it. So yeah, I would like to dip my toe into that.
Yeah, exciting. And sorry to hear about your injury. That must have been tough.
Yeah.
From Mark, you never used the lucky dip suggestion we talked about once. Did you try it and it didn't work, or never tried it?
I did try it, and it was just on the day that I just stuck to what I knew. But I do use that in a lot of my long runs. So it's basically where Mark has like loads of things in a bag, like you'll have nuts and sweeties of different types, and then you don't know what you're getting. It is quite fun. But I think on the day I just went with kind of my favorites more than anything else.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Very sensible. And then Shona Burnett, great work. Nicola, thanks for sharing the story.
Thanks.
So unless anybody's got any final questions or wants to come off mute or anything, we will probably wrap it up just there. Thank you very much, Nicola. That was brilliant and inspiring and local, which is great at the moment, doubly great at the moment, because that's suspect we might be restricted for a while longer. And great to have it from Carnethy as well. So thank you very much.
Thanks to everybody as well. And Kat had asked me as well to pass on her thanks. She just never thought she'd be in the position where she would need to have people fundraise for her. So she's just so grateful, and it's made such a difference. And hopefully once the restrictions ease, we can get on more adventures together. Yeah. Thank you so much to everybody.
Yeah, and please, just a reminder to everybody, if you can donate, please do donate. I've pasted the link.
Yeah.
Again,
just to mention the charity. So Kat spent 6 months in hospital before she was allowed home, and the spinal units have these garden areas which were set up by a consultant his son who had a spinal injury, and he felt that the hospitals should have more nice spaces for people to spend. So they set up these gardens in the hospitals, and they're lovely. I've been in the one that Kat was in, and it just makes it so much more pleasant that people can be inside, outside, and enjoying nature rather than just being in their hospital rooms. It made Kat so happy that she could do that, and there was even an outdoor kitchen sort of an area in them, and I was so impressed with them when I was there, and everybody who went into them was so happy. So it's a really something that people mightn't think about, but it makes such a difference to these people who are in spinal unit hospitals, injury hospitals, for often very extended periods of time. Yeah.
Great. Okay, Murdo, yes, I'll post the link into Facebook, and it will be on the talks page as well. Brilliant. Okay, so thank you very much, Nicola. And then I suppose going back to Martin Stone, great achievement and very modest to not even tell us your time until you're quizzed at the end. That's brilliant. Okay, so going back to what I said at the very beginning, if anybody wants to stay on just for a general chat, I think Jeff Roberts, who spoke 2 weeks ago, was suggesting that, and I think coming up in 2 weeks, I think we've got top photographer Nadia Khan, which is going to be absolutely amazing. And then we've got Carnethy's Sasha Chaplin, and then we've got Kev Woods. So 3 more talks to see us out. So thanks very much, Nicola, and great to see everybody on the call. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks. Shawnee, you